Senator Payman, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, David.
So will you abide by the decisions of the caucus in the future?
It depends on what is brought forward in the Senate. Obviously, you and I both don't have a crystal ball, so it's really difficult to say. But if the same motion on recognising the state of Palestine was to be brought forward tomorrow, I would cross the floor.
You would cross the floor again?
Yes.
Do you expect it will come forward again?
Well, I haven't been speaking to the Greens, and I think that's a question you can ask the Greens.
But you aren't obviously swayed by Penny Wong, Richard Marles, even the Prime Minister, that you should be following the caucus decision.
I respect the Prime Minister and my senior colleagues, and obviously the Prime Minister had a stern but fair conversation with me a few days ago, and I understand that he's got, very important decisions to make as the leader of our nation.
Stern but fair was the punishment, if we can call it that, of suspending you from caucus for a week. Was that fair?
Well, that's the prerogative and the decision that the Prime Minister came to. And, when I made the decision on the Senate floor to cross, I did it with the understanding that this could lead to expulsion and costing my Labor membership.
So you knew that was the price, but you were willing to pay it, to vote the way that you did. Do you expect any further sanction from the caucus this week?
That's up to the caucus to decide. But what I know is this is about 40,000 Palestinians that have been massacred and slaughtered since 7th of October. And I know that Australians are a fair people, and knowing about the Labor Party, we are a party with a conscience and champions of human rights, whether that be justice, fighting for freedom or equality. So I believe that I've been abiding by those principles of the party.
There is a clear principle and rule in the party that you can't cross the floor. Can I ask, are you intending to leave the party over this, to quit the party?
I just want to make an interesting clarification here. What do you mean by the party? Because the party, to me, are rank and file members, are unionists, are phone bankers, door knockers, long life members of the party who put together the platform. What you're referring to is the caucus, and the decisions that the caucus make, obviously, is up to them. But I do not intend on leaving the party, because I firmly believe that I've upheld all the values of what, as the Labor Party, we should stand for. So
you think the membership is with you rather than the caucus?
Well, I've been so blessed, and it's unbelievable to receive the support that I have. It's quite overwhelming, actually, whether it be from my West Australian constituents or from around the nation, New South Wales, Victoria. It has been, such an honour, but also it's humbling, and I hope to pay back the public for their solidarity.
Just to be clear, you said you don't have any intention of leaving the party, of quitting the caucus.
No, I do not have any intention.
You want to stay?
I do.
Okay. Do you accept what Richard Marles said earlier about you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Labor Party, you wouldn't have the Senate seat? Do you accept that?
Look, the Labor Party, as I mentioned, what it comprises of, but also when it comes to my election, we know that the 47th Parliament has been the most diverse Parliament ever, and you can't have that diversity in personalities and the representation, but not have the diversity of views and opinions. And I think it's important for us to consider that, modern day Australia looks very different to what it did 20, 30 years ago, and it's going to keep evolving that way.
And this is a really interesting point. Obviously, Labor champions diversity. Are you saying that they're not, in practice, accepting what that means in terms of votes like this?
Look, we've had diverse views in the caucus from, various people, various perspectives on the table, but I think that we need to be able to embrace that diversity of views.
Okay, let me ask you about your actual position. You talked about civilians being massacred in Gaza. Israel, of course, denies this is a genocide. It says it is simply responding to the Hamas attack of October 7. You face criticism for using the phrase, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, including from your colleague Ed Husic. The phrase has different meanings for different people. What do you mean by it?
For me, it means freedom from violence, freedom from oppression, and freedom of from inequality. And this is the right of Palestinians to self-determine their futures and their aspirations. And like I've mentioned in the press conference, you can't want to have a two-state solution and advocate for it without recognising one of those two states.
Do you support a two-state solution?
I do.
So you do support the continued existence of the State of Israel, of a Jewish homeland state?
Yep, and I think that the Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side.
So from the river to the sea still means the State of Israel exists?
Yes, obviously the Likud party charter says otherwise. They only want Israeli sovereignty.
And on the other side, Hamas does not want a State of Israel to exist.
Well, this isn't about Hamas. You know, the Palestinian people are not all represented by Hamas. And I mean, we can draw upon what's been happening in the West Bank, 8,800 Palestinians being detained with no reasoning or trial. You know, so if we want the hostages to be released by Hamas in Gaza, we also need to expect that from, you know, for the Israeli government to release the 8,800 Palestinian hostages in West Bank.
Just finally, and to sum this up, you intend to stay in the party, but you're open to crossing the floor again on a similar motion on this issue. How are your colleagues treating you over the past week?
Look, it's been a mix of reactions. I understand there's been various colleagues who have been upset with me and frustrated. I've received the cold shoulder, but there has been an overwhelming majority who have stood up in solidarity doing their welfare checks. And I know there are caucus members who have advocated for this matter longer than I've been on this earth for. And, you know, something as mentioned by the Foreign Minister and my WA Senate colleague Louise Pratt, that they've been advocating for the same-sex marriage. And
they had to vote against it because it was the view of caucus.
I understand. And their advocacy from within, it took 10 years to legislate same-sex marriage. We're talking about 40,000 Palestinians being massacred here. These Palestinians do not have 10 years. And so that's why I will use what is within my power as a backbench senator to continue advocating for a just and lasting solution. And I think that's what fair Australians want. And that's what I've been talking to people on the ground in Western Australia, whether they be rank and file members or the locals. And that's what I've been hearing.
Senator Fatima Payman, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Now we will